my first meeting with Andrew Garfield. He was delightful, nervous, whip smart. Hello, I'm John Crowley and these are my film firsts with BAFTA. The first TV show that I would say I had a sort of obsession with would have been Miami Vice in the 80s. I never missed an episode of that. You know, I think it was the first time I realized that somebody was in charge of making choices about the way the story was told. And there's a very sort of celebrated, maybe even mocked episode, which is set to the music of Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight. But it's a great set piece. I didn't know who was responsible, obviously, for the show at the time. I wasn't sort of paying attention to who directed anything, but of course it was the great Michael Mann, who's always had an amazing feeling for music and images. So that was an early masterclass. I think the first film I saw was a film called The Littlest Horse Thieves, which is a Disney film from the middle of the 70s, and it's about a bunch of kids who rescue or attempt to rescue pit ponies in the north of England. And it has Alistair Sim in it. I have never seen it since since I first saw it, and I saw it would have been in the Capitol Cinema in Cork City, somewhere around 1976, with my older sister, Mari. The first character I was obsessed with, like a lot of my generation, or my vintage, should I say, would be Luke Skywalker. And I saw Star Wars in the cinema, again in the Capitol Cinema in Cork City when it first came out. It took the top of my head off, and I can remember very clearly that destroyer coming in on the screen at the start and going on forever and ever and ever. And I remember the slight feeling of vertigo when the smoke cleared and old Darth Vader walked forward for the first time. And of course it's just an extraordinary thing to meet this piece of popular art which has got a great river of mythology and story behind it that you're being immersed in for the very first time. The first film that I watched at an age that I shouldn't have would definitely have been Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, which for some reason RTE seemed to quite like showing a lot, and I found it dizzyingly terrifying and loved it, and I still do love it, and that is a film I do return to quite a lot. And I think I probably fell a little bit in love with Jamie Lee Curtis and wanted to do my bit to save her from the boogeyman. The first film that made me want to direct was Paris, Texas by Wim Wenders, which I saw when I was 18, and yeah, the world looked different when I walked out of the cinema. I think the structure of the film was extraordinary. The way in which it sort of was like this explosion of a family, which gradually, it was like a reverse Big Bang, and the way that they sort of came back together at the end. I still think that the extraordinary strip show scene with Harry Dean Stanton and Tassie Kinski is an incredible piece of cinema and performance. And then you've got that great Ry Cooder score. Everything about it created a feeling that made me want to be part of that world for the rest of my life. The first thing I ever directed was a play which was called The Bear by Anton Chekhov in my first year in university. And it was certainly no masterpiece, but it felt better than anything I had done in my life up to that point. And so I knew that I had found something that I was in for. There was a quote from a film which obviously I just saw randomly on TV one afternoon, which is, "I'm from Brazil, where the knots come from," which I believe was Jack Benny in Charlie's Aunt. My first reaction to reading the script for We Live in Time was laughter and tears. And the scene, the big birth scene, where there were laughter and tears coming at the same time, was the scene that made me convinced that I was going to direct it.
What was your first meeting with Andrew like for Boy A, if we're going back in time a bit?
It was in the old bar of BAFTA in this very building. I was introduced to him by my then casting director, Fiona Weir, who is also now my wife. And he was delightful, nervous as hell, rangy, skinny, whip smart, and deadly serious about the work and anxious to sort of throw everything he had of himself at the work. And I remember he had a very nice red check shirt on.